Hey, this is Coach Latham, and we're continuing to review for the Algebra 1 SOL test, and this section is on polynomial operations. The first thing we need to learn is the law of exponents. It has to do with multiplying variables that have exponents. When you multiply variables with exponents, the exponents get added together. So the answer to this problem is going to be 3x to the 7th. The law that governs that is x to the a times x to the b is equal to x to the a plus b. 2 plus 5 makes 7, and this is simply 3 times 1 for the coefficients. Division is kind of the opposite. Instead of adding the exponents, you'll subtract. So if we were going to divide out this problem, we would do 9 divided by 3, get you to 3, and then x to the 10th divided by x to the 3rd. 10 minus 3 makes it x to the 7th. Y to the 3rd divided by y to the 3rd completely cancel out, so your final answer is 3x to the 7th. Here's an example of an addition problem of polynomials. When you're adding polynomials, it's simply a question of combining like terms, so you can rewrite the problem without parentheses, or you can just go straight from here. X squared plus 4x squared gets you to 5x squared. Negative 3x doesn't have anything like it, so it's just negative 3x in the answer. And then finally, 2 plus negative 8 is negative 6. So C is the correct answer. Subtraction is a little bit more complicated because this minus sign right here changes the sign of everything inside the parentheses that is being subtracted. So the easy way to work it out is to distribute the negative times the 4x squared and the negative times negative 8. That gives you x squared minus 3x plus 2 minus 4x squared plus 8. And now you're ready to combine like terms. X squared minus 4x squared is negative 3x squared. The negative 3x, again, nothing matches that. And now we have 2 plus 8, which makes that 10. So the answer is B. Here we have a power raised to a power. So we're squaring everything inside the parentheses. Well, we already know how to square negative 2. That's negative 2 times negative 2 for positive 4. But the new thing is x cubed squared. And when you have a power raised to a power, those two numbers are multiplied. 3 times 2 is 6, so your answer is 4x to the 6th. Here's another division problem. Sometimes the division problems end up being all about canceling out because you could have more x's or more y's on the bottom. That's the case here. We have 12 divided by 3, which we know is 3, so that's going to leave us with a 3 on the top. But then we ask ourselves, do we have more x's on the top or the bottom? We have more on the bottom, and when you cancel out, you find out that you have 3 more on the bottom. You do the same thing with the y's. Do you have more y's on the top or the bottom? You have more y's on the top. When you cancel out, there are 2 y's on the top being multiplied. So your final answer is 3y squared over x cubed. This is the same as the problem before, except you're going to divide twice. You're going to divide each term by 2x, so you'll cancel out twice. So this is what it looks like when you break it into 2 parts. 12 divided by 2 is 6. X to the 5th divided by x is x to the 4th. 6 divided by 2 is 3. And x squared divided by x is x. So A is your answer. This one uses the law of negative exponents. We've got an x to the negative 9 on the bottom. So all we need to do is move it to the other side of the fraction where it becomes positive 9. So it's x to the 9th, and the y was left on the bottom. So C is the answer. All right, now we move into a completely new part of working with polynomials, and one that people tend to hate the most, which is factoring. This is the first type of factoring. It's trinomial factoring. When you do a problem that looks like this, when it's in the form x squared something x something, we're looking for 2 numbers that multiply to 6 that add up to negative 5. 2 numbers that multiply to 6 that add up to negative 5 are negative 3 and negative 2. Negative 3 times negative 2 are 6. Negative 3 plus negative 2 is negative 5. Now, on the SOL test, you don't really need to know how to factor to get the answer to this question. You could simply multiply back out the answers and see which one matches that. The same thing happens on the next one. We're looking for 2 things that multiply to 4 that add up to 5. The obvious answers are 1 and 4. 1 times 4 is 4. 1 plus 4 is 5. So the answer is going to be A on this one. The second type of factoring that you need to know is called greatest common factoring. So we look to see if there's something that is common among both terms that we can factor out. We see that both of these terms have x in common. So we're going to divide both terms by x. Now it looks just like the problems that we've done before. X squared divided by x gives you x. Negative 5x divided by x gives you negative 5. So C is the factored form. Here's a hard one that may be on your SOL test. We've got to factor 10x squared minus 5x. So we're looking for the greatest common factor. The greatest common factor between 10 and 5 is 5. And then we've got an x squared and an x, so we can take an x out of both of those. So 5x is what we're going to divide out. So it's the number in front of the parentheses. And then we cancel out. 10 divided by 5 is 2. X squared divided by x is x. And then minus 5 divided by 5 is minus 1. And the x's cancel, so C is your answer. The third and final type of factoring that you need to know is called the difference of two squares. Occasionally you'll see one where the first number is a perfect square minus the second number that's a perfect square. When you see one like that, you take the square root of the first number, which is x. You write it down twice. You take the square root of the second number, which is 5. You write it down twice, and you make one a plus and one a minus. And here's about the hardest one you'll ever see on the SOL. This is a difference of two squares. You take the square root of the first number, which is going to be 4x. Write it down twice. You take the square root of the second number, which is 3y. Write it down twice. Make one a plus and one a minus. And the answer is going to be A. All right, this is one that they put on the SOL test every few years. They're trying to trick you into doing a lot of work, but you need to recognize that this is being raised to the 0 power. So no matter what they put on the inside, the answer is 1. Anything to the 0 power is 1. The other thing that will be in this section on the SOL is simplifying radicals. When you simplify a radical, you're trying to factor out a perfect square. The perfect square that's a factor of 18 is 9. So the square root of 18 works out to be the square root of 9 times the square root of 2. We know the square root of 9 is 3, so the final answer is C, 3 square roots of 2. Here's another example of one. We're going to factor out the perfect square that goes into 50. It's going to be 25, so it's 25 times 2. Doing perfect squares for exponents is easier than numbers. You just need to get an even exponent. So since x to the 7th is an odd exponent, you put x to the 6th here, your extra x here. Y to the 6th is an even exponent, so it goes in the first one. You can take the square root of this first radical. The square root of 25 is 5. The square root of x to the 6th is x to the 3rd. The square root of y to the 6th is y to the 3rd. And then the square root of 2x gets left inside. So A is your answer. And that's everything you need to know about polynomials to pass that section on the SOL test. As always, listen to it the first time through with me talking, then turn the volume down the second time through, hit pause, and see if you can answer all the questions. Study hard. Talk to you later.